On this episode of Pop Goes the Culture, we dig into the archives. Jack Klugman tells the untold stories of his illustrious career. Why did he storm off the Odd Couple set during week 1 and almost quit the show entirely? What line in Twilight Zone hit so hard he couldn't say it without choking up even decades later? And what did Jack say on stage that made the Queen Mother of England fall out of her chair laughing? And how did a little medical drama called Quincy turn into a political weapon that got him hauled in front of Congress? Jack spills the backstage fights, the friendships that saved his life, and the story of how Tony Randall dragged him back from cancer and silence to the greatest standing ovation of his career. I did this interview with Jack a few years before he passed away at age 90 in 2012. It's difficult to listen to because of the ravages of Jack's cancer, but we've remastered it thanks to the script and Topaz, and it is worth hearing what Jack has to say. I loved Jack Klugman as an actor, and meeting him was one of the privileges of my career. Here's the great Jack Klugman.
I'm tough. I'm like Barbara Walters. She'll be crying in the next 5 minutes.
No, I'll tell you the truth. I'm nothing to hide. Like some of these things, interviews with no agenda. Whatever you ask me, I'll tell you the truth.
Right, fantastic.
No, I'm really at my age. I have nothing to hide. If all my doors are open, so
What inspired you to write the book? That's it.
well, that's in the book with TonyandMe.com. I wrote it, a story of friendship, which is really important. But Tony died, finally. When he died, I realized how much he had done for me, how much he had opened me up. I had never let my kid in my mouth of that. Depression made me. When I was 10 years old, I wanted a bike. There was no one to go to say, give me money for a bike. Social subscriptions, the Colliers and sending posts and stuff. So that I never went to anybody for anything. But and the first 5 years of our doing the Odd Couple, we were very good friends. Good friends, but on a kind of a normal basis, and we respected each other's talent and privacy. But when you get sick, when you get cancer, and I lost my right foot, you become needy. And so either the relationship goes up a notch or it dissolves. Well, it went up a notch. He was the first one to visit me at the hospital after the operation, saw my kids. And he said, I was so upset. She acted without a voice. I couldn't act anymore. And acting was the most important. It was my best friend. And I said, I lost my voice. And he said, let's face it, Jack, you never did sound like Richard Burton anyway. And then he said, which is very profound, he said, Stefan, when you're ready to come back, we'll find a venue for you. Javier, you're going to find a venue for an actor without a voice. But he did. He never made a promise to me that he didn't keep. And he supported me. And I like ordered Married Gentlemen Society asked me to go somewhere. And the support of those people cracked open that shell of protection. And that totally just opened it up because I was needy, I guess. But he handled my vulnerability with kids' drugs, and he was just wonderful. And then after he brought me back to acting, which was just unbelievable. I never thought it would happen. Yes. When he opened up a theater, and I was on the board of directors. I don't know why, but he said, I need your vote. So he needed some money, and there was nothing for it to come. I said, why don't we go out and do the Odd Couple for 10 weeks? We'll take a salary, and we'll give the money to your theater. And he said, you would do that? I said, are you crazy? All you've done for me, all that you put me back to the theater, you never, ever made a promise you didn't keep. And you're surprised that I would do something for you. But that's the way he was. He was a giver. He was not a taker. How we did, we went out on the road. We did the Odd Couple for about 10 weeks. We raised over $1 billion to keep one of the couple productions. His theater was a wonderful, wonderful theater. Did he get the recognition it deserved? They used to call him the television entrepreneur with a Broadway complex, but wasn't. He wanted to bring good theater, and he did. St. Joan is Crucible. And then he did Ibn Abbas's that you wouldn't have seen anywhere else. I think what kids that would come down every to not see a matinee. Thousands of kids. It would cost them $35,000 a week. But he didn't care. He wanted to read good theater to newcomers, to kids. He was wonderful. I was convinced. So that's why I wrote the book. It's a tribute to Tony. But it's more a tribute to friendship. People don't appreciate friendship. I didn't appreciate it. To know how valuable it is that you got a friend. Appreciate it. Not a shit. And tell the other person that you appreciate his friendship. It's really wonderful.
You mentioned in the book there's a moment where you talk about finding the key to Oscar and Felix as well. And again, friendship was that key. Would you tell me about that?
I saw the Broadway production of Double with Nathan Lane and Matthew Buck. They're wonderful. And Nathan was what I played. He was just great. And the secret, and they found the secret, they added in the producers, is you must love each other. If there was no love, there was no conflict. So you can live together, but you love each other. In fact, in the play, Simon says that you moved in my closest and dearest friend, and that's what he must be. So, like Garry Marshall, we had the best comedy writers ever because Garry Marshall and Jerry Belts and Harvey Miller. But by Wednesday, I said, it's very funny, fellas. But where's the love scene? There's lots in the scene where I say, Felix, I love you, but you've gone too far. Or he says, Oscar, you've gone too far this time. So to show that otherwise there's no conflict. Even in the play, in the third act, when he's about to leave and I'm throwing him out, I'm in front of the door and he says, I'd like to leave now. And I took about 5 seconds, not saying anything, but looking at him and said, I don't want to end this way. I love you, but we can't live together. But it was in silence. And I moved out of the way. And that's the secret of doing that show. In fact, every David and Pythia's kind of relationship, there's got to be love there.
You, one of my favorite lines in the play was you leave me little notes. We're out of cornflakes.
But that was, I understand. They were up in Detroit or something, and Mike Nicholas had said to me, I don't have enough stuff for Oscar to tell him that he's aggravated with him. So they went out to lunch, and Neil Simon wrote it. And the walnut that came out, and he's read it, and he just fell about, slammed it. He's pretty hard to break down, but he just is funny as hell. I mean,
can't take it anymore, Felix. I'm cracking up. Everything you do irritates me. You leave me little notes on my pillow. We are all out of cornflakes, F.U. Took me 3 hours to figure out that F.U. was Felix Unger.
It just happened, she didn't write the name so that he could do the joke. The name was there, and it still sounded one of the funniest men around.
Amazing. You had done The Odd Couple, and Tony Randall had done The Odd Couple separately from each other before you came together. Would you tell me about that?
Well, I replaced Walter Matthau on Broadway, and in fact, that's how I thought I got the play. And Tony had toured it. And so what I said, someday morning, Garry Marshall wanted me. But Tony Randall wanted Mickey Rooney because he had left and Mickey wouldn't be doing it. So he said, so I thought that Garry had seen me on Broadway and I replaced Walter and I was pretty good. He said, no, I never saw it. I said, well, why'd you hire me? Why'd you fight for me? He said, I saw you in Gypsy. And if the woman was singing to you, and she was spitting all over you, and you never showed it. I said, that's a good actor. I said, that's why you come to the park. You fought for me for that reason. But it was a good combination. We really would, even though we at the beginning, we didn't know if I was doing the location spots in New York. And he said, and I started smoking. I was smoking that. This was causing my cancer. And he said, can't smoke? Sorry, I can't smoke. I'm smoking. You cannot smoke in my little machine in front of me. I said, I'm going to smoke whenever I want. So he got out of the car and he said to the guy, I can't work with this man. I can't work with him. He smokes. I got on the other side of the limo. I said, I'm not going to work with him. Who's he to tell me I can't smoke? So Garry said, very easy. We'll get 2 limos. That was how that blow. But outside of those little things, we never had an argument. 5 years of doing the Odd Couple, and we disagreed on what was funny. He was usually right. I'm more realistic. This comedy goes way out, and it's wonderful. It blossoms into fantasy. I always said, damn it, that's a reality. I keep one foot on the ground, but he doesn't. But he was usually right, but I think, where's the reality? He said, you don't need reality, it's money. We'll make it real. You and I will make it real. Let's make some money. And he was so good that way, and a lot of the stories are his ideas. He's Garry Marshall, and I used to go to some restaurant every Monday, and we'd talk about ideas, but I would just listen. And Tony would say, okay, now he's got a brother into play. What is the brother? Where he's from Buffalo. What's he do? And now they would start. And Garry would say, he built a bubblegum factory. Good. And he'd test them, and they would go on. It would be the most delicious hour I'd ever spent.
Wow. Did you guys improvise with each other?
Yeah, after the first 15 shows was one camera. We didn't have any rehearsal with one day's rehearsal. But we did 3 cameras. We would start on Monday, and we would, if I had to teach him manners, football, he had to teach me manners. Because Jack teaches Tony football before blank pages. Now we would improvise. His new sports. He knew very well. So I said, I would teach him football, get down. Now he knew he was supposed to be opposite me. When he would come alongside me, I'd say, we're not the Rockettes. He'd come in, and then he put his face right against mine. I said, I want to dance with him. He said, it's to provoke. And that's what he did. It's like a talk. And the improvisation is to provoke. And he would provoke me. And the writers would come at the end of the day, see what we had done. They would clean it up. And we would start the next day with what was cleaned up. And I would basically the original script. Right? People didn't like, writers didn't like to write for us. But we had the best comedy writers in the business. So it wouldn't be better than they could usually write.
How much were you Oscar? How much was Tony Fielders?
He would have hated that question.
I'm sure.
He would have said, oh, what a wonderful question. No, I was a lot more like Oscar than he was Felix. I didn't get him. I was Garry since I was 5 years old. I love women. I chase them. I'm a sloppy dress up. Please, I shower, but I'm messy. And what a judgment mostly about Oscar is he's carefree. He wants to live a carefree existence. And he had to live a good life the best way is free as care. But people come in and they impose problems and realistic probably got to pay around more than he does what the kids are. So he tries to be carefree, but I now, at 84, almost can be carefree. And it's a wonderful way to live, and I don't care. I do it for myself. I do things for the fat lady for myself. I'm not interested in money. I don't need it. So it's a very, very good position. Tony was not an aide, but he's the kind of guy. He sent away for a pair of pants to get Pepsi Cola written on it for $2. He would put them on, and they looked like they just came off the rack at Brooks Brothers. I would put on a pair of pants that just came off the rack at Brooks Brothers. They looked like they had Pepsi Cola written on them for $2. It's just, he had shoes for 35 years old. He said, don't have them cream because it takes the oil out of it. On him, they look great. On me, they look like old suits. So that was the difference. He was not anemic, but he was a very learned guy, very smart.
Oh, it seems like you knew a thing or two yourself, though.
I had street smarts. He was smart. And then he knew about aficionados just to call him for information. But if you went to a museum, which I did, well, on the road, I go into the art museum, he'd teach you more in 2 days, in 2 hours, and you could learn in 5 days. It's a little. He'd teach you what each Cuban meant, the ones with the bows, ones without the arrows, what the hats were, the colors of the hats. And then on the way home, in the cab, he'd tell you the best dirty joke you ever heard. He was so well-rounded. He'd go in a French restaurant. He could order the greatest meal in French, and why? But 4 times a year, he'd bring down a Kentucky Fried Chicken. He loved it, but he knew he shouldn't eat it too much. He loved it. Beer. He would drink the fine wine. He was very loyal, too. He was married for 54 years to his first wife. And when she got ill in the last 10 years, he would take a job coming out of town for more than 3 days. And he was there all the time. If he'd rush home and she did the cooking, and he would build up her strength. And then maybe when she was strong enough, he'd take her out for dinner in the theater, which she loved. She was a great lady, Florence. And then he'd mold his wives. He had to face the woman. And then he would take her home, and she was just about last. Then he would take her home, and then she would rest. And the next 3 weeks, he'd build her up again. And he really cared. And then when he lost her, he was really grief-stricken. But then he met this great gal. She's a great gal. And Heather, I didn't play with her. We didn't train on a horse. She played a small part. She was wonderful. So I thought, his elder was 50 years difference. He called me. I said, what's the difference? You love her? He said, yeah. I said, she loved you? So I think so. So what are you worried about? He said, there's 50 years difference. I said, but the love you guys had for each other, I'll make up for it. And even though he wanted to be a parent, now he would be. He had 54 years, he never had a child. And he had this kid. So when we were in London doing the archival, she was 77 at the time, and his wife was pregnant. She found out that day she was pregnant. And he knocked on my dressing window, and I opened it and said, some shady words. She was, I miss him so much. And we bonded, but he was in the hospital. I substituted for him. American Cancer Society gave him an award. I received it. I hosted a party, a gala to raise money for his theater. And I would visit him in the hospital every day. And we talked about how lucky we were that I had in my life and he was in my life. And I still be involved, which we had. For Joey Lewis, the comic used to say, my piano player's been with me 20 years. I didn't know he drank till he came in trouble one day. I didn't know how much I missed him until I lost him. And I borrowed a line to his memorial from last word, one of the series, my favorite, in which he said, boy, what a jip, which was the only album kind of that we ever did on the air. Because he had a long pause when the security men told us, and there, so you need to tell them, boy, what a jip. And I was anybody who was taking him off, just seeing too early. I said, no, boy, what a jip. And he was not a kid. He wanted to live, and he had so much to live for. And he loved those kids and his wife. I thought more was a jip that he was taking too soon. See, he deserved another 5 or 6 years.
I used to see him on Fire Island all the time.
Yeah.
We were in the same community. And I just never forget, like one time I heard him behind me, because you're riding your bicycle, and he go, on your right. And I thought, I know that voice. And I turned around. And when I first saw him, I thought, I know this guy. Was he a friend of my parents or something? And then I realized it was him, and he was so nice and so friendly, and he loved those kids.
Oh,
You could see it whenever he and his wife were together. It was just amazing.
Asians here. I did his born, and they would be running around there like wonderful kids making noise. He was oblivious to it all. He was just enjoying the thing. And I went there one night, and he and Julia sang an aria from how she fell in love with the opera. He didn't push her. She just loved it. She would ask them to take her to the opera, and they sang an aria in Italian. It was the most wonderful thing. I saw recently, and I said, I used to really be upset. I got too much. Because he's not there to guide. See, they'll miss him. They don't know, but they'll miss him. They loved him so much. The boy just... He said my kid was getting stronger. He said, I didn't pick him up. I got a hernia. Well, you can't pick a kid up when you're that age. And this kid was a solid kid. But he said, in the book I said, the boy said, I'm going to invent a machine that will take me to heaven to see my clogs.
Oh,
Jeez, they're wonderful kids. And she's a wonderful gal. They really are.
and so let's talk some more about the archival. Tell me a little bit about, well, let's talk about Garry Marshall for one thing. Who's a character in and of his own right.
Garry Marshall. Without him, there wouldn't be no archival. But he and Jerry Belson. Why did Danny Simon was the brother? He's the originator of the archival. He was here at some twice from out. He cried all the time. She was my story editor when I did a terrible series called 90 Versus Supporters. She's the one that got me to do replace Walnut. So, yeah, I got that off on that. Where was there? Old
Garry?
So, but you know, so I said, and he asked me to replace Walnut. I said, let me see the script. And I read the script in the archival and I fell off the couch. I mean, that line, 6 cheap people in an empty hotel. I literally fell. I mean, it's my kind of deal. So when Garry asked me to do it, I said, well, let me see the script, the pilot. I don't get me anything. Well, I fell off the couch laughing. There was one last thing. Tony says, you can eat on my floor. I said, hey, you can eat on my floor, too. There's a half a tuna sandwich. There's a piece of pizza. And I fell down laughing. It was so well written and so done. And there's 2 wonderful writers. And I know it was great. So I said I would do it as a result of that. And he directed some. He wrote some. Whenever we were in trouble, he was always the calming influence. Good thing we don't have a punchline here. You don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. With that Bronx accent, he couldn't tell he was a graduate of college. He would take care of everything. 5 years, we never, ever had a panic. And he taught kids that would come, or potential writers, potential producers. They would sit around the table. The only thing is the first time when we were 3 cameras, we showed up. And they said, no. You act and we write. And we said, no. We got to participate. We have 65 years in the theater at that time we had. I said, we will contribute. They said, oh boy, the actors always come in. But after a couple of weeks, they realized we had something to offer. So we would work till 11 o'clock every single day, from Monday to Friday, 11 o'clock, to make sure the show was the best that we could make it. And that's what I loved about Tony and most of them. We didn't care about money. We didn't care about money. We only cared that the show would be good. We didn't care who got to laugh. There was no competition. We were never in competition with that except to make the show the best. And Garry loved that. I know there was one more, but he was blurry, but something, and I hurt my foot. So he was dialing, and he's doing 1, 2, 3 more, 6, 7. And I just looked at him. When I took it away, he said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, and I just looked. He told it, and Garry said, I didn't know. I thought you had to do something. But if you just looked, and somebody said something ridiculous how funny it would be. And right now, Garry is my dearest friend. He's really wonderful, and I appreciate him. I tell him, and he's remarkable. He's now doing Happy Days, a musical. He wrote it. He's directing it. He's done a million things going, but I used to be a waiter at Buckliners in Philadelphia. And there was a guy named Quincy. There was a waiter. That right? He did everything like this. And I was always behind. He was so very slowly. He had more tables than I did. He never was in trouble. Always everybody was saved. Everybody was on time. He was never late. But he was steady. This was also must have. One guy was that was very slow and steady. Got everything taken care of. Never had to worry about a show. I never worried about a show as long as Garry was there. And Jerry Molson.
Gary's sister,
Said, you ask me, who is the person that you would least, you would never ever think of as a successful director? I would say Penny Marshall. And she is good. I mean, those pictures, big and League of her Rock. Wonderful movie. She was introverted. She was shy. And I couldn't believe it. And then she became, the whole body language is different now because she's really expressing herself. But she's good. But he did. She got more and more. He got a Laverne and Shirley. He got her to play my secretary. She was wonderful. What an asset. Then she did Laverne and Shirley. And she got bored. He's a director of few things. What do I know? She helped him direct some, and he was there for her. And then she got the movie, and then she went on. He does it with his sister, his father. His mother used to appear on our show a lot of times. She was a dancer. I adored her. But he takes care of everybody. People come to him now and say, I need a job to pay my insurance or Screen Actors Guild. He's always there. He does it. He gives everybody a job. He's wonderful.
Maybe I should ask her.
Yeah, he'll give you a job. He had to need it, though.
No, I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and it's not coincidence that from Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley's people went on to be directors and producers, and all these.
Also, a lot of John Shire who used to work for us. It's right. He now does big movies. Is more White Mercy Myers and just doing big movies that I went up to see about, but I didn't get it. Eli Wallach and I are doing a play next year. We're doing a reading and then bringing a word play, and then afterwards we'll to do it. It's about it being out to bring it into New York. So it's a good play. It's the Holocaust, so it's got a lot of drama dust to it. But to work with Eli, it's for nothing. I'll do for nothing. I need to work with it. I saw him. I was doing Sunshine Boys, and I went to see him, and then terrible play, I thought. But he made it work. He said it. And the way he listened. I will never said, Eli, the way you listen, I learned now. I listen, I'm not really listening. And he's hard to take a compliment, but he was wonderful. So we're fans of each other. We've known each other for quite a
That's
while.
a good thing. That's a great thing. Well, you have such an expressive face, too. I mean, you could make, from your smile to your anger to the slow burn to just sort of, you can make a heart melt with just a little smile sometimes.
You're not allowed to fake it. I'm not aware of any of that. I try and work. And then I learned it back in the theater. I hate film. I hate film. It's so impersonal. I did 2 pictures. I co-starred with Lee Remick in 2 movies. I never met her. I co-starred with her. Can't happen in the theater. But the only movie I ever really enjoyed making was Twilight Zone. That was a good movie.
Tell me about that one.
Well, first I got me the job. I had worked with Cinema in television. But he thought I was too old for it, which I was. But I said, no, I want Jack. And he never told me. And I had been on the road with him and Mr. Roberts for 15 months, so we got to get good friends. He got me that. He got me a show with Shaka Mogan and Lama Call and Petrified Forest. He never told me about it. I thought, boy, I'm so good, they'd sort me out. Staring on me for that. But he was wonderful that way. And everybody was there every day. Every minute of every day to help the other actors. They were wonderful. And what I remember most is Ed Beckley. He used to bring in a different niece every day. I say, Ed, how many nieces do you have? He said, as many as I could check. He was a wonderful guy. Said, well, imagine that past. And everybody's at 900 a week. Nobody's up there. I fought as a kid. He said, he didn't make any money. And they opened it. It's an odd picture. They opened it. They used to get theater on 15th and Broadway, go to Capitol. Seated 5,000 people. That's where they opened it. It lasted a whisk, disappeared. In fact, they put it in an art theater, played for 2 years, but it disappeared here. And Reggie Rosenwater told me that he made most of his money as a play called 12 Angry Women, which was done in community theaters and PTA meetings. But I loved making that movie. That was the only one.
And then you sent it up on The Odd Couple. You did a parody on The Odd Couple.
Oh, yeah, well, the parody is supposed to be how we met. Wasn't really a parody, was it? No, it was I didn't even think of it. I thought of it when I started, hey, this is 12 Angry Men. But it was mostly a good way to bring intimacy. That's the thing about the movie that didn't work. They went outdoors. He went there with no story in the park. They were like, he didn't do that. You got to see them trapped in an apartment. And they can't get out, and they can't get out. And that's what drives them crazy. But the minute they can get out, see the Gammon and Sunshine Boys, them stood walling out, they can get out. And he's making him a sandwich after him in the deli. He goes in this club, the Friars Club. Well, when I did the play, his whole life has been destroyed by his partner retiring. He can't get out of that apartment. And that's what makes him angry. See, that's the thing. Some pictures you can't open up, and those are two. Neil Simon's very hard to open up. There's no second half of you. You can't open up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Quick question about Oscar. I mean, I ask this of each person, each actor who comes in, because the characters that you play on TV become real for the audience at home.
They're real for me.
They're real for you. What is Oscar Madison doing these days?
Well, Oscar Madison, he's doing a one-man show that I do. I'm booked for next year already. I'm 84. I'm going to be booked for next February. I said, I don't even like big bananas. But if I'm alive, I'll be there. If I'm dead, it's usually shoots. I'm not showing up. But I'm done with the play right there for the assistant living. I think some shows I do, which is good. I like that. Something to look forward to. And then Eli and Oscar doing a play. Oscar Madison is alive to make a play, and he'll be alive forever. That play is the best comedy written in the 20th century. That play, Garry Marshall did it in England in 1967. But it does not like American comedies as a rule. They feel they're manufactured. They did this play. I love to think, well, this play this ticket will be as hot as all the years of Salo. I know in Victor Spinetti. We've done reviews. We were that for a year. What performance, the matinee, the Queen Mother came. She's alive. And she's having the 2 bodyguards in the front row. And I have that thing where I say, He leaned me little notes on my pillow. After you, it took me 3 hours to figure out that if he was feeling something. And it was a minute of laughter. And I looked, and she had fallen on the floor. She was on her knees laughing. And the two bodyguards were there. They loved this play. This play, there was a foolproof play, but it's not foolproof. But
They tried it with women. Women.
yeah, well, that was wrong. They did it with blacks, but they did this Jewish humor. No, they did it with blacks. I mean, African Americans were wonderful actors, but there was a dirty Jewish humor. It just didn't work.
I thought it was a writer's strike that caused them to. They used the same exact scripts.
Nah, they wasn't writers. They used, they
It was word for word. It was the same script.
Like some of them,
Writer's strike. Some of them, they did
really?
word for word. They remade your episode.
Well, that was they shouldn't have done it. But there were good actors. One guy was from Saturday and Sunday. He was one of them. And that's why.
The guy from Barney Miller.
Yeah, and Neil Simon lost a lot of money.
Oh, you can tell me.
No, I can't tell you
How about Oscar?
What's in the play? When he's Oscar. I think he says it. I say no. I say when everybody leaves, when he comes and makes his first entrance, their whole poker players leave. I turn. I say, Felix. Like he's, what are you doing to yourself? And he says, I know, and play. There's one line of exposition in that play. And those poker players, the first line is a laugh. Guy's getting very slowly. And the guy who's losing is looking at him. He says, tell me, Mr. Maverick, is this your first time on the riverboat? It's a laugh. It goes on from there. And I'm laughed at. What time is it again? What time is it? What is it? Don't touch him when I'm not counting. So don't play with him when I'm not playing up counting. Usually the other way around. Like, you know that this guy is winning once you get out. This guy's losing once in the second. It's a wonderful play. It's what the construction is. Just fabulous.
Well, you can't beat Neil Simon.
No. That was, but that, she was objective about it because it wasn't about him. It was about Danny. And Danny even tried to write it. And they were very close. And Danny called him and said, they were talking. He said, what are you doing? Danny said, I'm trying to write play because he never moved. And who was Oscar Master? They said, gee, that's a great idea. Neil said. So then later, this is what Danny told me. And then later, 6 months later, he sounds the play to me. I can't get to it. So they said, let me read. Let me write it. I'll give you 10%. That 10% was worth about $15 million. But, so he can be objective about it. You bring in people, you can say anything you wanted. And he captured Felix so beautifully, which you can't be objective about yourself that way. Neil could, and that was his best. And Sunshine Boys, it's a marvelous play. I didn't appreciate it whenever you had to see it, or read it a few times to get the depth, to get their emotions, their music, in it. It's not Sniffendale. But really delving into what makes him thick. It's a wonderful play.
Let's talk about some of the guest stars on the Odd Couple, because you had some amazing people.
Most of them are Tonys, and the opera singers, and I heard a lot of them were Tonys. I didn't know an opera singer from a baseball player. I didn't know Howie Cosell, I knew. But that was, I think, Garry Marshall's the suggestion. And Al and I became very good friends. But I had a horse that was starting the Kentucky Derby. She was down in Kentucky, so he was with me when we became friends. We started drinking together. And I liked him. I really liked him very well.
What times? Wasn't he Howard?
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't have had him on all the time. He was fun. He was coming to visit me at my little place on the beach. He sat there for hours. I liked him very much. And his wife smoked. Maybe he had toured and they had a love match I'd never saw before. And they loved each other so much. But she smoked like a chain smoker. And she died from it. Smoking is terrible. Don't smoke. Terrible.
I did a couple of anti-tobacco things for a couple of years.
I know. I did a few too.
Yeah. How about? I mean, you had some real major people on. It was like Monty Hall.
Joe.
We
became friends. We were friends. I didn't know that. She was good friends. I go to his house for dinner. and his wife, so wonderful producers. She did a couple of good shows, Wonder One, and then that is a funny show. All those takeoffs on those shows, because there were really parodies and satirical. I thought we did our show, and he kept raising his hand. I started, you made the contestant on me. Hello, quick playback. That's great. Didn't pick you. There's a egg salad sandwich. I'm just, really? And you're not a big deal. Was show fun. We did 2 of them. They were funny shows. They were good. And Marty was wonderful.
And the Password Show, one of my favorites.
That's my favorite show.
Was it?
That's what. Well, I said mayonnaise. He said Lincoln. I said this. What do you mean? He said, well, someone on site that Lincoln loved mayonnaise. It was so crazy. That's why he was so wonderful. And why there'll never be another Felix like him. Still, Maxie was wonderful, but he really tried to hate it. Don't you understand? He said to me, and I'd done the outtakes in the book for double giveaway free. He says, why did I saw these things all come to it to me? Well, it doesn't make any sense. But he says it with such conviction. And you're making me understand that I break up. I laughed. He looked at so many times because his intensity was trying to help you was so strong that it would, but it didn't make sense. She was so funny.
Tell me about some of the outtakes.
Well, first, we never did spit takes because they would be honest, it was it'd be somebody says outrage, here now Molinara to a tribute to spit takes that I think is hilarious. I show it when I do my one-man show. I say, I want you people to come along with me. We're going to be together for 2 hours, so I want you to laugh. I want you to get shown in the right foot so I can't hear anything. Then 4 minutes of outtakes and the odd couple. And it never fails. They laugh. They're a little resistant at first, but then when they get to that point, they just go full. And on our dressed as a woman at the end, all disheveled. And I say, what happened? Some man won't take over an accent. He's so funny. I mean, it was wonderful. They're wonderful outtakes. You don't have to get them anyplace else. Except if you buy the book and it comes with a book free. That was my idea because it got people laughing when I did I used to be on boats and ships rather. I would show them. And it was work I could read.
That's a nice treat. How about when Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs came on? That was an amazing.
I made a lot of money when they played. Because I knew chicken butt. And they was given 7-2 odds in his finger. I couldn't believe it. I put down a lot of my wallet. Some of that, these are the most money I ever made, Cameron. I knew she's chilling. First of all, she was so competitive. He was fooling around, but he was a good player. But he was not in her league. I mean, I don't care. I just love that. He was as competitive as she was. He was a show-off. But he's a good man. He would like to lose to him. Garry Marshall and Ollie Miller and Maggie said, we just lost $100 a piece to Bobby Riggs. But they were happy about it. He played them with one hand tied behind his back. And he played one hand, and he beat both turns. They played together, and he beat him. He was good. I liked them for Jim Billie Jean. And she was wonderful. She was a wonderful guest. And I loved watching them play ping pong. They were good. Everything they do play ping pong. They were athletic. She was wonderful. He was fun too.
That was a great moment. You took sort of this cultural iconic moment that sort of whittled it down to size. And that's what lives on. Nobody watches that, but the ping pong game.
I know.
Odd Couple. That's what remained.
Well, if they ever show that bananas didn't leave no country, you realize that all the balloons that got men against women, tennis players, and why are women getting less money, and why is it only 2 sets? So it was a whole lot of value before they came on and played. And that was, you can't do that now. Right. You can show it, but you can't see what went before. But a television show is just a funny thing.
It was a great show. You had a lot of great moments.
Oh, I learned a lot. This was when I learned the Street Cameras, when the Street Cameras came in. And we were always canceled every year. We were in 52nd, 60th, they were never in the top 40. Because we were on Friday night and people couldn't stop it, couldn't find us. Tony would say to me, what's wrong? I said, listen to that audience. in the studio, they're falling bound. Of course, they'd find us like we go in syndication. We're going to do well. I know it. And stay with just, that was we had the best comedy writers. And we worked till 11 o'clock every night. I knew we had a good show. And that was wonderful. And Edward Villa came on. I didn't know who he was. He would turn, I watched him dance and I just went crazy. He stayed up in the air. He was so wonderful. But he was a good friend of Tony's. And he was teaching me, like I was doing some exercise where I was going, yes, as I was going down, but I didn't know. Yes. So I was like, yeah. And as I was getting, no, and I went all the way knock. I couldn't get up. These are things that happen during rehearsal. That's why it was so much always better with seat time was the one camera. The first 15 shows are one camera, but there was one camera show about the parrot that I just loved. That was written by the guy who wrote Where's Papa? That was a futuristic prayer. That was wonderful.
Do you remember doing the last episode?
Yeah, I remember. I always want to get out of things. I don't know, when I was in Gypsy, after 3 months I went, that's all I said. I want to get out of this. She said, what are you doing, Sharon? I said, yeah, I want to, she said, well, I'm not going to let you out. She said, your choice of a supporter. Yeah, I'm a judge, John, that's what I have. I want to get out. She said, no, you're never going to get out. He said, you served it 2 years. That's it, I served 2 years. But it was a great musical. It was wonderful to be associated with those people. Jerome Robbins and Steve Zahn, they're the real geniuses I ever worked for. They were wonderful. And the last episode, I wanted to get out. Why? Because I think to run more. It's the fact we did that. We're loyal. So when the show was, I went, I'm free and light. But I was sure because he was moving out. He was getting mad. I said, no, but I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. I was working a great deal in those days.
That's great. And the last, and you played opposite your real life wife in the show.
Yeah, but she did about 3 or 4 shows. Yeah. Yeah, she was wonderful. She was funny. But I used to play with her. He saw it. I used to play with her up in Connecticut. Yeah, I love her. She's good, right? I can't get him done anywhere.
We'll work on that.
Down there.
When the Odd Couple finished up years later, you had your throat cancer. And then later on went to do the Odd Couple.
Well, that was also Tony, yeah.
Talked about if you would when the things start to happen with your.
Well, I always had a little trouble. I was a smoker. And when I was doing the Odd Couple on Broadway, I had a little trouble. So I went to see a doctor. He said, you have leukopenia, which is the beginning of cancer. Now, if you stop smoking, it might reverse itself. Very tough little, wonderful Max Song stuff. It was great. I said, well, I can't stop smoking. She says the nurse, don't charge me. Get out of here. Get out. You tell me for my side, tell you. You tell me you decided. Get out. She said, wait. So I stopped smoking, and I went back 3 months later. And he said, you have virginal cords. You have the same cords that you had when you were born. It's reversed itself and they're wonderful. Got what I'm with a pack of cigarettes. And I started again, well, what took you 40 years to get? That takes you 4 months because you become allergic to it, susceptible. And then I started to have trouble. But I didn't stop smoking, but I started to have trouble. I stopped, and eventually first I had radiation, and then I had the operation. When I came out of the operation, they didn't know how bad it was, and it was worse than they thought. And I actually was unable to operate, but it was his procedure. He said, I found a kid with an older man, and she's going to do the operation. Said in Hugh Miller. He was a peer guy with golden hands. He called the surgeon of the year. He's retired now. So he was wonderful, and he did the best he could, which was wonderful. He saved my life. But I couldn't speak. I had no sound at all. It only was, and I felt like John Henry, the horse. John Henry, they produced. But when he raced, he made $6 million racing. But today he couldn't race anymore. He was not very worthless. He was a liability. He had to pay for his food. He had to pay for the stable. It was nothing. So that's what I heard. One day they wanted me. I made all kinds of money. I could make all kinds of demands. The next day, they wouldn't even answer my phone call. But I didn't like it because I had no value at all. And I became very depressed, and I became a kind of recluse. I remember seeing on television a show on the news, a guy used to pitch for the Mets who had kids that lost like, it's so numbers. How did you do that? You don't need, I don't need my right arm. You don't need your voice. It's straight. But like it was a reality, I screamed and agonized over it for a long time. The uncensored. Why you can blame God out of the fakes as much as you want? Doesn't help it. Shut a deal with it, I had your window. So that was it. 6 months there, as I said, I was pretty tough and I was never cold on anybody. Whatever I wanted, I did myself. I didn't let anybody in my life. It appeared that he was the loner and I was gregarious, but it was the other way around. Tony was gregarious and I was the loner. And they told me they wanted me to appear in that Miranda. And this is something I tell in the one-man show. And I said, don't do in the telephone. It's what it's just celebrity status we're interested in. We had 20, 50 survivors. We want you to give the tree of life to them and their spouses and then speak. I said, I can't even go to on the telephone. They said, please. Then finally they talked to me into it, so I went. It was 107 degrees outside, and that's where we were. The audience didn't help us. I got to speak, and the PA system broke. And I hated everybody, the American Cancer Society, and the 250 survivors, their spouses, myself, especially for being there. Now I had to present the tree of life to these people. Went, oh, God, I don't want to do it. 500 people did 2 at a time. I just take pictures with them. So they came up. Now, one person out of the 500, she was the program eye. They said, we love you. We prayed for you. You're going to make it. You look great. Yeah, I never accepted it. It's sick you become needier. Never accepted that kind of love or support. I never experienced it. I saw me right back, and I went in the building, and central, and I had a happy cry. So I did that. And I gave that tree of life to 500 people. And all I took 250 pictures. And the grid on those pictures was genuine. And that was right in that protection that Tony exported. And he just puts it aside and so I want to be vulnerable. Yeah, my vulnerability was getting up. Don't worry about it. That you love me and let the kids in. So he did, and that's what happened.
How wonderful. That's the silver lining to be.
And then there was a guy, Garry Marshall. The rag said I was going to die anyway, so I did a show on the Entertainment Tonight saying, I'm not going to die, I just get active anymore. This is 3 years later. So Tony's, but I went to see him. They gave me these violent voice exercises. And he said, I think I hear a sound. I said, I think you hear money. He said, well, what do you got to lose? Try it. So I tried it with Garry. He was wonderful. And he gave me a sound. A little sound, but very stable. He heard. Tony calls me and says, if we could do one performance of the Octuple on stage, I could make $1 million for my theater. I said, what do you smoke? He told me. I can't hear talk to you. What are you, crazy? So I told Garry, I said, Tony called him. I made fun of it. He said, tell him in 6 months you can do it. I said, anymore. He said, tell him. I said, my teacher said in 6 months I can do it. So Tony said, bye. Anytime to publicize it. And I worked like Rocky. I mean, I did exercises and I worked out and I got in good shape. And I went, then I went to do it. And I said, Tony, they're not going to hear me. He said, I promise you, they love you, I'll make you. They'll hear you. That's what he said, so I trusted him. So now I come over tonight. Before I come on, Oscar comes on, there are 4 poker players getting relaxed with normal voices. And the people pay, there's $1,250,000 in the till. He paid $25,000 for 10 seats. And plus going to the party.
Who were some of the players that were sitting at that?
Oh, God. We had Marty Sheen, Fred Procol. He's an African-American. I'm not Rappaport. Was there?
Then...
No.
Cleveland
Little, which I've done David Floss with it. And we had Jack Weston. And we had Dave Madoda. And they what I passed. I mean, oh, it was just unbelievable. And they were wonderful. So they were giving big laughs. So I came on. I said my first line. And it was, it was only a little sound. And I heard them moving around in the chairs uncomfortably. And I knew what was crazy. I'm not going to get through these next 2 hours. I must have been out of my mind. I hated Tony. I hated myself for being there. I hated everybody. God almighty, it was like a free fall. But I had to go through. And about a minute and a half later, somebody said, I'm called to this. God. They said, what did you have to eat? I said, I got brown sandwiches and green sandwiches. They said, what's the creed? I said, it's either very new cheese or very old meat. And they laughed. And they heard me. They were just in the hearing. And they say, if you lose one arm, the other is twice as strong. I believe it. And that's what happened. My concentration evidently got very strong. And I kept all the laughs I had when I had a voice. And when I was over, we got a statue ovation for 3 minutes. And I was standing to Tony on stage, and the stage manager said, don't you hear them? I said, what? You looked up the grade. Nobody moved. These people staying there were still applauding for 7 minutes. It was the greatest night of my life. And Tony gave it to me. And then in the audience were 2 women I'd worked with, Helen Raisin, Sylvia Sidney, there about 195 years. And Sylvia turned to Helen Raisin, she said, Helen, have you ever been to the theater? Well, you've seen so much love go from the audience to the stage and back. And Helen Raisin said, I've never seen so much love in the theater. It was the greatest night of my life. And when I would get up to class, though Tony never broke down in the character, his eyes would, don't get him, he said, no, I knew you could do it. He was so supportive. And then, having goosebumps now. And I went to the party and he introduced me as the gutsiest SOB that ever lived. And I said, no, I'm the luckiest SOB that ever lived. And I've been everything ever since. I Sunshine was with him. I did one student out on a horse with him. They did a terrible place in Florida. And had a lot of tweeted television against. And my admiration for him, my love for him. Bro,
What an amazing gift.
oh my God, amazing kid. Leave that. That's friend. He gave me back acting. He must have known what it would feel like to lose your voice. He was on my side. It was wonderful.
Wow. There for the grace of God, huh?
No, it's right. I made it. You haven't already knew it, but he would have done it anyway. And honey, he never saw it. It was that he was doing it. He completely altruistic for a big sometimes. I jacked it and he said, no, I got laughed at her. I said, no, look what you did for me. He said, you gotta take my time. Still reminded me of that episode when I saved his life in the archival. And he was saying they didn't the jewelry, and then I wake up and they need that picture with a blip. Thank you, looking at him. And I said, stop it. And that wonderful line that I lived in Harvey Public Years, Gordon Edward. And so I sit down on house and have some chicken. And I choke, protect your children, the chicken. They just save your life. It'll be even, and it'll stop. So I did that. And we had no button on it, but he gave me the chicken. And I said, I choked. And he helped me. I said, I choked on the bone. And he said, no. There were no bones in that chicken. So it was nothing. The army never came up after 2 days. No bones. How did it roll? Well, when he gave me that line, I fell him out. It was so funny. And that's what I loved about doing this show. The laughs. The lines they came up with. The kid Buster came up with a line that was not funny, but itchy. It was there. We were doing one camera. Yeah, playing poker. They accused me of stealing $50. And I didn't steal it. We couldn't find it. So when they all left and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I come out looking for the $50, and I can't find it. And I have no bunch. Still button. Like old Cherry, I said, she got a button here. I don't know what it is. He said, I'm playing back. So I come back in 5 minutes. He said, try this. And I'm going to sell all my friends a Meyer dog. Well, I was so taken with that lie. I was quiet. So, but about 30 seconds of point, he said, oh, well, I'll write you another line. I said, "Oh, the insecurity of comedy writers is something." I said, "I love the line. I've been digesting it." But that's what he saw my one-man show. He said, "He's a very cynical guy, but he's the best. I love him." He said, "It's too sweet. Jesus. You love everybody. Everybody loves you. You gotta give your audience diabetes." So I said, "Well, that's how I feel." Today, you're the funniest line about Brett. Because she told me more about acting than anybody. She really knew about acting. She was wonderful. She taught me how to act. And I was very much on fire, and she said, "What got me here?" And Mary goes, "Honestly." So to hear I had to turn my head wasn't an arbitrary, was an organic thing. And I knew what she meant. And I turned to, I wouldn't have done that. Controlled behavior started to happen, and I was like, I'd been acting for a number of years, but I was then to see what she was saying. It was a live show, so I was digging it a lot. She said that I'm married and put that in both my ears, which was a good line to give. But she was at the Actors Studio. She was a member of the Actors Studio for years, prestigious, but Randall was there, and Marilyn Monroe and everything. And I said, but guys would get up and do scenes for them. They take like 2 hours, 4 hours to feel up and to see what the qualities were in the bedding. So what did you learn? What is the most important thing you've learned at the studio? She said, to get an aisle seat. Which I loved.
When you guys came back together to do the Odd Couple Together Again movie, what was that like?
It was no movie. We did a reunion.
A reunion.
We were on. So I thought it was a pretty good show. Well, no, we didn't. Should have followed Tony. Tony had a better idea. He wanted to be like a marathon. And he cheated to the subway, and then they caught him in it. I said, no, I wanted to deal with my cancer. And out of Tina, it was not as funny as his idea. So we were on opposite Barbara Walters when she had on that woman that cut off her husbands. Everybody was watching. They felt like the odds of that happening would have been just terrible. Not even one. She hadn't had a shot at hitting a lot of them hitting that. And getting a rating on that show. So that was the reason that we didn't do well.
I watched it.
Wait, when the reruns, it was pretty good, but it was a good show. It was a good show. It was a solid show.
Kids are getting married.
Yeah. It was a good show. But then one of I was with my girlfriend, was I married? The girl that I was with, this is a girl I go with. I've been with 18 years, Peggy Crosby. So I went with them 10 people at Paramount. So I said, when Bing Crosby died, I said, look, I'm working an idea that I want to be president. I don't want to be president, but you're going to love this idea. I said, Bing Crosby dead. Now we're not a team, but we're sort of as the Odd Couple. Let's do the Odd Couple road pictures. Odd Couple goes to that. They said, now I do that, not make the president. They said, no. I said, why? They said, I want to make 4 million, 5 million. We want to make another Star Trek. We'll make 200 million. So that was, and Garry and I were doing a show about, we were traveling down south and they get caught by the police. And then two funny people did it. Richard Pryor. And they did it there, to church or something. I mean, like, it made hundreds of millions of dollars.
They're crazy.
So crazy. It's made $100 million. I told him we made the fine. Made the fine. So next week we go to the judge. We spent another week in jail. And then he was booked with the same things. So naive. I said, no, don't take the kid.
Two great characters.
Oh, little one.
I gotta tell you, the first time I saw Quincy, and you had that what later became the opening of the show, where you just whip off the cover from the Quarks, was maybe the funniest show open ever. It was hilarious.
Gentlemen, we're about to enter the fascinating sphere of police work, the world of forensic medicine.
That I think was Glenn Larson, who created the show. That was his idea. I was proud of that show. Really, really proud of that show. I'm more proud of doing Archival, but that show, I was one of them muckraker. I was a great fan of Upton Sinclair and his series. I wanted to clean up the slaughterhouses and the coal mines and all the things that he did. So Larry Bud was my hero as well as his. And that's what I wanted to do. And I saw when they sent me the pilot, this guy was two heroes in one. He's a cop and a doctor. And he's very powerful. I mean, no matter what everybody says, if the coroner says it's a murder, he must investigate it as a murder, or as a suicide, you have to do it as he says. I mean, nobody can override him. So I thought, wow, that's a good idea. But so he said, at a meeting with him, he said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. But he didn't. He kept doing cops and robbers shows. So I quit. And they sued me and everything. I said, I don't want to do this chunk anymore. So they said, what do you want? I said, I want him out. He said, but he's the co-creator and he was good. I said, I don't care. Shame on me. Somebody was very shrewd. He had a lot of money to leave, a lot of money. One night, a year later, I said, he was at a party. He wrote to me. I said, then why do you come up to me? You know, I don't like what you stared in front of me. He said, stay well, you're making me rich. It was in but anyway, was not very hot. He did that show in Hawaii, the mid-song farm.
Magnum.
He was a lot of successful series he did. So,
Who took over?
but I loved it. So anyway, when I took over, we started to do shows about the social conscience. And there was started fair. We brought out, and I stole a lot of stuff from 60 Minutes. I stole from the headlines and papers. And I had my brother who came out with me, who was a failure as a businessman all his life. He said, he had cancer. I said, come out, and he went from me. He said, well, I do it. It doesn't get an office, but the dead difference. So he came to me one day, I have a story, I have an idea for a story. But Quincy, I said, Pete, make the money. No, he said, I want to participate. And he gave me a show. The first show they gave me, coming before the rest of the minutes, got a lot of Reagan, the silence of all the off and drug bill. And was so hot, it was just talk of Washington for 3 months. Then he gave me 5 kids, the newspaper on the horses. When they were handicapped kids, very happy. And the sequestrian said it was being closed. He said, there's a Quincy. I said, what are you talking about, Pete? He said, look how happy they are. Let me take it away from them. Here's some research. So I went down there and I found $25,000. This guy would let me shoot there, which was cheap. But he could save the equestrian center. So he did. And I did a wonderful show. We did 17 of my brother's ideas in 3 years. So he had lived his life as a businessman, but he did it as an artist. He was so happy the last 3 years. It was like, and I was Fred the artist. And he was, because he was a failure all the time, he was not really a nice guy. But he turned into a woman, and they would say, why aren't you more like your brother? And he Jesus. But he was wonderful. I loved doing that show. I got a letter from a woman saying, a lot of these, thank you for the show about sudden death syndrome. My daughter would have died because I wouldn't have known what to do. Well, that was better than any ratings or any money in the world. And I got a lot of letters like that.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You did one I remember very clearly. There was a Holocaust denier.
Yeah.
That was a really good episode. That was real.
I tried to get Lee Strasberg for that. He almost, but he wanted to talk to me first. I guess he wanted to, I was a little scared. I studied with him for a couple of years. And I didn't want to come because I always thought I minimized the importance of television when it came to guys like Lee Strasberg. Oh, I like the Sinatra. He loves the show. I told me he loves the show. And I know I could have got him to, Steve Dash Frank Sinatra to do a Quincy. It would never enter my mind. But there were a lot of people. But I had Joe Schaefer, did a couple of my shows. I loved him. He was the greatest storyteller in the world. And Jason Momoa, George Scott's wife. That's the other name. Wonderful actress. Wonderful actress. And I used to use, I knew it's terrible.
What will you do first?
Yeah, Tommy Hewis. She was wonderful. And I got to a time daily. I used to ideally as much as I could. So I used it once, twice in the year. She said, you can use it twice in the year. I said, I'll use it 50 times a year. She'll come. She was so wonderful. And every time an important show was I said, if Diane is available. She was just wonderful that I am up for criticisms that she did that were just sensations. But one where she was dying, she was just great. And one where she and Tony Doors housed some kids with Down syndrome. And people were complaining that they were in the neighborhood. Well, that show bring a titty right. And we did some good shows. I'm very proud of that show.
You got to reprise the character on Diagnosis Murder, didn't you?
It's not really that what I am now. But this is not in the stereo. CBS put up $70,000 for a reunion script. I worked with Sam Egan on this show. I have a 2-hour script that is so beautiful. It would save 1,000 lives a year. It's funny. It's a reunion. It's that everybody that was there. It's the best Quincy ever. You can't get it done. I'm tired. 40 people go. Try to get it done. And done. So I thought my dad stepped on people's toes. As universal as I had, on his strange hands about 4 times, I can't get it done. I don't know whether because of the oil companies or what. It indicts the oil companies. Says we have about 2,200,000 feet of pipe underneath the ground in America that have oil and gas. And they're rotting. And there was an incident in Bellingham, Washington, where I talked to the senator for 3 kids were playing, and one was out of charcoal lighter, and he threw it at another kid in the one in the creature and blew up. The 3 kids died. You remember fish there, 1,000 feet in the air. And that's what's happening. But then the oil companies are out of pay, and $15 million fine, and start to dig it up. And there were 3 kids, the way I remember the way the show ends. There were 4 kids riding in a Jeep. This is Athens, in Texas. And they're smoking here, and kind of listening right into a match in Europe. They're going over a bridge, throw up, and go up, and they die. They would save hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lives a year. But it's funny. And it's nostalgia. I can't get it done. And for CSI, all those shows are popular.
Exactly.
I don't understand. I tried to buy the title, but they didn't buy it. And they got her stairs sitting from her. Maybe the show, but maybe
I hope so.
Well,
Listen to the shows you never get to see, you know, so the reunions that haven't happened yet.
oh, this is a good. It's really good. We're polka playing. It's funny as hell.
Some of my favorite things that you've ever done were the Twilight Zone. Here on some classic Twilight Zone episodes. Just
But nobody's done more than Moses Meredith and I. We did 4-piece.
really.
I was doing Gypsy. In fact, I got Gypsy. So doing the rock serving Warehouse 90, the Dark County. And I'm doing Gypsy and Rock calls me. He said, I just wrote a not Twilight Zone for you. I said, I have a 2-year contract. I can't get out of it. He said, I did research. Said, you have a 2-week vacation coming in January. You come out. There are certain playwrights whose words you like to roll out of your mouth. Arthur Miller, Liminal Decks. He just like could have well rock serving is in that category. He just love to roll those words around it. They mean something. They're not just, they don't throw out. They fight out. You have to fight on them. And I don't love serious words because I'm a depression baby. I thought I would have loved his words, Charles Garfield. There was times. So I said, yeah, and I went out and I did the trumpet player. Well, I learned from a guy in the Gypsy Bang how to figure. So I learned it, so I had a lot of confidence in it. I bought a trumpet and I would figure it all the time. And I really liked that show. It was a good show. And then I did a pool player, which I loved, was Jonathan Winters. He was crazy. Johnny's the funniest man that ever lived. And whenever he'd go up, he'd forget a line. He'd do a half-hour improvisation of Paramount Circuit or the baseball player. And I wouldn't love it. They'd get Johnny, we have to go back to work. So he would think to stick his... He was wonderful. I loved it.
He did the one with Billy Mumi?
Yeah, well, that was... No one has ever heard of Vietnam. That was in the 60s, early 60s. And he was a pre-mentioned Vietnam. I said, what is that? Where is that? And he told me what it was. I had no idea. Well, you know, that my kid was dying in Vietnam. It was a wonderful show. But he realized when I see it now, it's rare, but when I see it, I realized, geez, I didn't even know I had that kind of behavior at the beginning. When I threw the money on that, I didn't know I had done that. I was very pleased with that show. I was pleased with all the shows except I didn't like one. I did one show where I was an astronaut. I just didn't like that one. Betty Beers was in it, and Ross Martin. And Ross, quiet all the time. I said, Ross, it's like acting with John Crawford. Stop it. Well, I didn't care for that one too much, but I liked the other three. That was an hour show.
That was well, none of the hour ones were really that inspired.
Yeah.
I think even Serling himself said that it wasn't his favorite thing with AIDS.
But he was a hands-on, and he read every script he cast. He was the healthiest looking guy I ever saw. I was so shocked when he died. He wrote outdoors, and he had this wonderful blonde tan all the time. And typically dressed because he was small. And these short guys, like doctors, they always wondered if he dressed. And he was dressed that way. He always dressed well. And he had been a fighter. So he was really good health. So I was really shocked when he died.
Yeah, right.
Oh, you see the patterns and stuff that he had written before. And he changed the record everywhere. Oh, God, he was wonderful. And their words was just, I watched Jack Palance say those words, and it's so wonderful. Jack is so brilliant.
And we've covered as much as I can think of covering.
Okay.
So
And I never stopped talking.
you were great.
Yes, what time is Sunday on the clock was made.
In the time since this interview was recorded in 2006, Jack Klugman continued to act despite a tough battle with throat cancer. In 2008, standing firm on his legacy, he sued NBC over withheld profits from Quincy M.E., which aired from 1976 through 1983, and famously even prompted his testimony before Congress thanks to its social impact. The lawsuit was settled in August of 2010. Jack's final screen role came in the 2010 horror film Camera Obscura before illness sidelined him one last time. Jack Klugman passed away on December 24th, 2012, at the age of 90 after a long illness related to throat cancer. He was the last surviving member of 12 Angry Men and was remembered as someone who ennobled the ordinary in every performance. What was your favorite Jack Klugman role or episode? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't done so already, I urge you to find a copy of his book, Tony and Me. That's it for now. I hope you'll subscribe to Pop Culture Culture TV. I'm remastering all the archival interviews we've done using Descript and Topaz. The links are below. And if you want to help support that effort, I hope you'll become a member of the channel or head over to support us on Patreon, which I'm also in the process of updating. Lots of really good stuff coming up. I'm David Levin, and I'll see you next time.